So I thought I would expand this even further by going into this book that not even they touched before. So the fundamental question going into today is, what's the defining relation and difference between Chinese and Japanese music, and how does that difference sound on the chin? That will be the content for the first half of this book. So some quick background. Yamagata Daini, first the Yamagata family. They were samurai back in the Oda Nobunaga late Warring States period. If you're into like Sengoku games, you'll probably hear Yamagata Masakage, one of the 24 generals of Takeda Shingen, who later died in a cavalry charge against entire barricades of guns in Nagashino. And later on, the Takeda family fell. All the proper sons and daughters died defending the last castle, except that Yamagata Masakage had an adopted son, and after the clan fell, he still lived there, but he lived as a peasant, and around 5 or 6 generations passed before we reach to the story of today. So, Yamagata Masasada is his actual name given when he was an adult, when he came of age. He's the second son of Yamasaburo. He lived in Shinohara village, which is now downtown Kofu city in Yamanashi prefecture. And he has an elder brother, Masaki, and a younger brother, Bumon. And we don't know how many sisters he has. They are not usually recorded in family trees. And his father bought a low-ranking samurai title so that he got some elevated status. Remember that this is a feudal society with very strict social class. So they managed to grab hold and rise themselves again just a little more. But then while at the job, they have to name themselves with another last name. And even so, he did not clasp onto that for long, because later on, Bumon, the younger brother, got into some trouble where he was implicated in murder, and as the policeman, the yoriki of the town, they were basically forced to give up that name in order to continue with the criminal investigation. And but Daini, or Masasada, when he was young, at least got around 4 or 5 years while he was working as yoriki, a proper Confucian education, because they were entitled to that as a lower class samurai. And from that, he loved books and he loved connecting with scholars and made a lot of connections. So during that time, not only did he study a lot, he also formed an academic circle and traveled, according to some, far and wide to Kyoto and Edo and studied a bit more from there. So after he lost his job, he still had a way out, and that was to become a doctor, civilian practice, in Edo. So he proceeded to the capital. Now, during this time, while he was working as a young lower-class samurai, Tokugawa Yoshimune was the 8th shogun of Japan at the time, and one of his chief advisors in culture was Ogyuu Sorai. Think of him as the Machiavelli of Japan at the time. And he was dealing with things like standardization of music, using Confucian standards to bring Japan into order, and also deal with things like densification and urbanization. And Confucian music, as with Confucian rites and standards, were seen as this thing to make the people conform and make the world more orderly. So he was tasked with this project of rebuilding Gagaku, rebuilding the imperial music of Japan, but for the service of the shogunate family, not the emperor. So it was sort of this collaborative project between the imperial resources and the shogunate resources. And the first results came after Ogyuu Sorai's death in 1732. So you can imagine what a long project that must have been. It cost 2 decades. And his subordinates were the ones who took over and brought out a very large tome of like 90 or 100 something different Gagaku pieces, all converted for the Chinese 7-string zither, the guqin. You'll get to hear a bit of it later on. And the results are in 2 books. One is called the Gakinfu and the Kintogakufu. Togaku is tongue music. So that's the earlier name, or the primal form of Japanese Gagaku. Now, the first book that Yamagata Daini wrote was actually something that got him into very deep water. It's a political treatise that brings about saying like, if the ruling house, whomever that is, has lost its way, then the mandate of heaven will topple them over and bring the one who is truly righteous, aka the Japanese emperor, back into power. That nearly got him killed when it was first written, and then he had to bury it in his garden, in his backyard, and then dig it back up and say he discovered it. That's how contentious it was. And he had to lay low for a few years after that. And during those lay low years, he acted like a typical Confucian scholar and wrote the books that are in question today. So in 1762 and 1763, he published Tenkei Hatsumo and Seikei Tota. Those are basically star charts. And is like the third or fourth big scholar, big name, to standardize the understanding of the Chinese 28 constellations and also calculate the size of the sun, distance to the moon, these kind of things. So it was a combination of traditional Confucian astronomical knowledge as well as some incorporation of Rangaku, or Dutch studies at the time. So there are some new things in there, despite the old Confucian language. Then there is this book, Kingaku Hakki, or Elucidations to the Study of the Qin. It's 2 volumes. It's very thin. If you look at the Taisho era 1913 publication, it's only like 36 pages. But then, as you can see, this book now is 120 something. So there's a lot to expand on. And it criticizes the standardization of music in the Ming and Qing, which is their contemporary dynasty, and also tries to say that the old, true, authentic China is now lost in the books, and of course, Japan. So this book is trying to continue the the shogunal project of bringing the court music of Japan, saying that it is the real traditional Chinese stuff, and try to justify that as the holy relic of Confucian knowledge in Japan. Now, this is something I want to compare with. On the left, you see the official project from 1732, the Gakkyoku Kinku. They use the standard tunings from the Chinese Guqian tradition. So C, D, E, G, A, so Do, Re, Mi, Sol, La, it's anhemitonic pentatonic. However, if you look at the Kingaku Hakki version of the same tune, the strings sound weird. It's Titan 136. It's in the reverse pattern of the key signatures we usually do in the cycle of fifths. So you can see the order, I don't even know how to begin talking about that, but the Do is on string 4, right in the middle of the instrument. So it's G, A, C, D, and then it's sharp F. So that's the selection, but then it's also screwed up in the order. You'll get to hear it soon, which is here compiled in a bunch of YouTube links that you can take a look, but I'm going to play it right now for you to listen. So, we have various versions. This is the restored Tang Dynasty version that we now have. Is the volume good enough?
I think it should have the computer if you need. It's good online.
Okay. Note the atmosphere, the energy, and the pitch. I'm making a selection of the intro and the first phrase of the piece in several renditions. Now this is what we get today in Japanese gagaku. The teiki is the flute that you're listening to right now. And this is the melody line that's used in Yamagata's version. They're using the same score. It's technically the same pitch. And you hear the relationship. going to hear the reed organ come in the back. That's what's used in the shogunal project. So they play different roles. So from using different instruments, you extract a different line of music. If you hear any notes that sound flat, it screeches up a little at the end, and that's the actual measure. Built in. So as you can see, it's 3 times slower. Now I'm going to show you the 2 adaptations on from the 2 different scores. The shogunal project. It's background droning voice. Or maybe not. And then repeats. Now, Yamagata's take. Note the imperfect cadence. So that's the sample bit I wanted to show you. Speak. From the speakerphone.
You want to try again, Hippocrates, if we can hear you?
least we have speakers on this laptop.
Yeah, maybe you just try. Try again there, Hippocrates. Still
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
we hear you now.
yes,
Great.
yes.
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Super.
Good. Thanks so much, Juni, for your wonderful presentations. May I ask if there's any questions coming from the audience or on Zoom? I can't see the audience, so
Oh, yeah.
I can't see hands up. Is there any hands up for now?
If you go to room camera, it'll switch. Yeah.
There we
There we
go.
go.
Oh, hi everyone. I'm Hippocrates Cheng. I don't know if you hear me from the beginning, but yeah, I'm the moderator. And why don't I start with questions, and then we can also go into the discussions, because I think this is a fascinating topic. Also, there's many layers, because I know this also involves a lot with the technical side about tunings and Japanese scale, Chinese scales. So I will start from the surface, Juni. You described this as a process of Japanifying the Qing. How will you distinguish this from a simple cultural borrowing? This is my first question, and maybe we can start from there.
Thank you, Hippocrates. So, yes, the ever so sensitive question about cultural appropriation. While we're very sensitive to this idea today, East Asian culture is built upon the shared values of Confucianism in their way of living, their way of thinking, and their metacosmology, metaphysics, and so forth. So when you have this, it's like Christianity, where you have the belief of God and the Trinity, and these fundamental concepts, these basic building blocks. When they're the same, the culture that comes up will share a same language. This is what's the case that's been happening here. So in the Tang, when the Japanese Xin Tang Shi or Ken Toshi went to China, they did not get to study the temple music of China. That was banned to them. However, they did study the banquet music that came from Central Asia and used in fun times, and that became their temple music in Japan. And this knowledge is kept in the palace and as well as in the Buddhist temples. Later on in the 19th century, they moved to the shrines. However, the language that's used there is Tang imperial knowledge, or handled by the Tang imperial hands. So the language is classical Chinese, and the Edo scholars, you can say they did a very good job in preserving that by insisting on writing in a foreign language to them. And that's how this music, this knowledge, looks so Chinese, and is absolutely readable by someone like you and me, both Hong Kongers we are, who are ethnically Chinese and read the Chinese language. So there's no problem there. However, you need to catch the very Chinese, very Confucian language underneath, and to catch the nuance that they're trying to bring something distinctly Japanese from there, and that point is the ritsuryo system. That the Chinese do not have, or at least do not use in that kind of context or capacity.
Thanks. Are there any follow-up thoughts on that?
It sounds very strange or very different. So when we listen to Japanese Gangaku, the first thing we think of is, wow, how slow. And second thing is, why are there so many flattened and weird sounds? It took me 16 months intensive work to catch this project. And during this time, I've been listening in the car, in the shower, or whatever, 12 months straight of just unending Spotify Gangaku of the same 9 pieces in the book. And it nearly drove me crazy, but I finally managed to get myself, okay, so when the Japanese play this note, it actually is 1 semitone higher on the score, but the reason they do it is because over the years they sort of develop a penchant to bend a certain note, because this note is usually used in a certain section with a certain decoration or tremolo to it, and that's how they do it. So there's a lot of stuff that just by simple, easy listening, you won't catch. And that's a lot of stuff that I'm not a gagaku musician, so that I have to learn it from an outsider without actually playing one of the proper instruments of the ensemble, because this instrument ultimately did not get adopted into the gagaku orchestra. But that's all they produced in the Edo period. All the music books that they have, for some reason, a third of them are Chin manuals. Yes.
So I have a question for both of you, actually, because I know Mr. Cheng, he studied piano role, right? When you were years before. I was actually very interested in how, from your book, that because music is something abstract, that we use words and books to actually record music before the technology of records and videos, of course. So is there something lost in translation between words and the music? But at the same time, is there something, I'll say, unique or something interesting by using words to record musical scores, and so that we can understand people thousands of years ago how they play music? Because I'm not from a musical background. I have no music theory ideas.
Thanks for reminding me of how this translation project started and how it's worked. So thank you for that question. When I started working on this book, the first thing I translated, or the first thing I worked on, were a bunch of rough tables. That is now the second volume, the bottom volume of this book, where he describes the Socho Hachihen, the 8 different tunings that he created for this book and representing the ritsuryo scales. And he gave very detailed accounts of this string has this pitch, but this pitch is written in the Japanese name rather than the Chinese name. So I first listed them out, like which string equals which pitch, and then I converted that pitch name into the Chinese system, and then I work back and I go okay, what strings did he change? And the result are the tables that you find in the book. And I go this logic is crazy. He's insane. And that's when I realized that the value of the tuning systems is probably the biggest contribution that Yamagata made to the Chin community. And if it wasn't for the fact that his name became taboo, and he was beheaded by the shogunate for treason, basically, and this knowledge was not studied by the people of his time, and by the time that people did, the entire Edo tradition of Chin players died out. So it's rather sad that his work did not influence the academic community and the musical community around him, because what he did was truly innovative.
But I guess my question is, when we study music, Asian music, from books, from characters, from kanjis, what kind of, I'll say, because that's 2 medium basically, right? Mm-hmm. So the translation between the mediums, to me, is very interesting, that people can just by looking at words and understand how to play this instrument, or imagine how that sounds. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you have the expertise on the theories and musical experiences, but as a new beginner of learning this art, I'm just interested in how this is. What's your opinion on this?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the beautiful thing about when we say Chinese music theory, when people say, what do you study, or how do you study Chinese music theory? The first book people stuff you is very UofT, I'll say. They stuff you down the deep end and go swim, beep. And the first thing they teach you unlike in like Western music theory, they teach you like this is a C major scale and this thing is called a scale, you know? No, they go like this is temperament studies. We start with this pitch because, you know, the musician of the Yellow Emperor listened to a phoenix cry and this is the standard. And because of that, they describe the whole process of sanfen sunyi, you know, chopping off 2/3 and then adding a third and the whole system. And then they show you all the numbers, how they actually get it. So you can actually mathematically or physically reproduce the lengths of the bamboo pipes or the lengths of string in order to get to it. So we are able to create a language that is meticulously reproducible in the current context. So we can always, you know, run experiments to actually do this again. Thankfully, we're not dealing with temperament today. We're dealing with modality, the next step up. So if temperament, or, you know, fine-tuning what each pitch sounds like, is the atomic level, we're now dealing with the molecular level. We're dealing with how scales work, given that we now acknowledge that there are 12 tones in an octave. And how do you organize, how do you pick out the notes and then call that thing a curated group of scales, you know, scales or modes? And how do you sort them? And that system comes from organizing this concept called a Yeung, or a modal key. So you start from one note and then you do a cycle of fifths and you jump, but you don't necessarily start from that modal key as the first tone of the scale, because each tone that you jump after that can still be the first tone of the scale, but you just rearrange those notes so that you form another scale, but of course it will be a different mode, because the distance between note to note is different. That's the thing that Yamagata's talking about here. And when you are forced to use that cycle of fifths but only pick out certain parts of the scale, that's the point of contention that he's bringing up, because he's not using just the first 5. If you just use the first 5, that's the Chinese system. But in order to play those accidentals, you need to somehow reason out how those accidentals came to be, because they need to form a relation with all the other notes in the scale using a cycle of fifths. That's the Confucian legitimacy part of, you know, this whole knowledge work basis. And he's using that rule of the game in order to justify that Japanese knowledge is legitimate because it follows the Confucian mathematics of it.
And for Mr. Cheng.
I should also add that to respond to the questions from the gentleman, there's many different kinds of notations, music notations in various musical cultures. So like, for example, the Western style notations focus on pitch and rhythms, right? And some notations actually focusing more on the performance practice. So for example, like the Qin score, it's a temperature score, means you will see the information of the playing positions, but not the actual pitch or rhythm. So that is one of an example. There's also some musical cultures that is orally based, so there's no written material, but you will learn by starting from imitating from a master, and then you internalize the experience, and then it becomes your own music. So, and you also mentioned about the piano rolls. Piano roll is a little bit different, that usually you will have a player piano artists or arrangers, that you will have the piano that you can punch the hole by recording your actions. So it is more like a piano roll is a way that you record performance and then turns on paper rolls, and then if you play back the paper rolls, the piano will be kind of like automatically played. So then you realize depending on the notations, you can also see what kind of musical parameters of certain cultures that are preferred.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Hippocrates, for reminding me about the nature of notation for the Qin. So for the Guqin, we use 简字谱 or reduced score notation. So what we have here are a bunch of Chinese characters that are placed here that, you know, describe the different motions of the left and right hand. The top half of a character gives your left hand's pressing or touching position on the string, And the bottom half gives the string number as well as the right hand motion of how it's plucked. And in the process of interpreting this score, while the definitions of each of those motions are clearly written out in the section just previous to the scores, most Shinpu tend to do that. They give a very clear definition of what each of those symbols mean, so it's very clearly defined inside the book. And there are some definitions in here that are different with common interpretations of the movement, so very interesting there. But because it's like computer code, when you have a left-hand position that's already indicated there, unless you cancel it, the rest of the score will also continue to follow using it, right? It's like code. But there are times when that does not make sense in the score. So sometimes you have to wonder, do you leave your hand in this position after you split up, or do you go back to the previous definition because they forgot to cancel it? So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't sound reasonable if you just follow it to the score. So you need to go like, do I need to correct the score because they're wrong? Or do I go like, no, I just don't understand that what this crazy Japanese music is. And it's intended to be like that. That's why you have to start listening to the source music, because this is copied or transcribed music from an ensemble, a gagaku ensemble. So that's why you need to go to the source and listen to it. But then that comes to the new challenge of when you listen to it, it sounds completely different. What am I listening to? So you go like, how did they even extract this music out from place? So you added yourself a new problem. That's why you go like, how do I listen for the right parts to extract it in order to follow the trail of ideas that the original author made in order to get the score that they proposed to me. So you have to go on this sleuthing trail, and because again, Jianzipu does not include rhythm, I will have to either guess from the logic of the implications of the fingering itself, or I listen to the gagaku again. To which when I try to imitate something like this, I go like, still doesn't sound right, and when I give it to a gagaku musician, go like, this just sounds like a bunch of tuning exercises. This does not sound like the gagaku I know. Who is this, fake person trying to bring out this fake gagaku? Away. So I get a lot of dismissals from gagaku scholars going like, what is this? And I go like, this is a book that you guys never looked before. It's been collecting dust. And you can see from the multiple layers of broken telephone mistranslations that this is a very, very difficult project to work with. Because you have to basically slip yourself into the shoes of the ancients and actually recreate a process of how did they get to the conclusions that they did. With the potential, that they might have copied one or two words wrong.
Great. Do we have more questions? Final questions?
Yes.
Thank you for the slides. That's so much research to put into 30 minutes. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I only selected one page out of the book for you to read.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but it's very dense reading. I'll give you that.
Yeah. I have a question because you mentioned that, for example, jumping into the research at first, it's open with mimicking the wails of a Fenghuang in Hongdi's era, and my question is two sections. First, is the documented Guqin script, is there a lot of elements of mimicking nature? And if there are, for example, we don't know what Fenghuang is.
A phoenix.
Yeah, I mean,
Usually
it's a phoenix, but at our time, it feels like a mythical creature, which at Hongdi Sudan might have actually been a bird that they call Fenghuang, but we can't hear that anymore. So I was wondering whether that's an element of, because you also mentioned it's difficult to really recreate the sounds just